Hi guys. So I promised you a video. Um, Funny thing is though, I came back from work and I played some games with Steady. I played some Halo, and then I went to my room just to chill out, watch some YouTube or something before I did my video, and then I promptly fell asleep. So it's been one of them weeks. It's been a very, very, very difficult week in the teaching sphere. But hey, let's talk about some Games Workshop tournaments that have gone on over the years that I've been a part of. I did do some notes about what to say and what not to say, as in details, and I've decided not to give the locations of the tournaments, mainly because it could let people triangulate where people were playing and what stores were there and who was there and what was going on, and I don't want that. I've never wanted that. I've always wanted this to be an anonymous, let's just have fun sort of a thing. Eventually, I will be reading from the Reddit, the Warhammer Horror Stories Reddit. Eventually, and that's going to be similar content because I can't verify what people are saying on Reddit. They're just funny stories. And whilst I thank you all for trusting me, at the end of the day, you don't know what I'm saying is true. Which is why technically why I'm going to in one of my next videos do a pay slip video where you can see a Games Workshop pay slip, what it looks like, how much you get a month, sort of a thing. And we'll actually triangulate if it's fair. We'll actually go down and we will do some maths. How many stores Games Workshop has, how much each store probably makes, and we will triangulate whether what you get paid every month as a manager is fair. Um, spoiler alert, I don't think it is, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So the first tournament I went to as a Games Workshop staff, not a manager, staff. And the only one I'm going to talk about location-wise was in Warhammer World. Now, this was a quite a large event, 2017. No, end of 2016. Yeah, it was end of 2016. And whilst there, I I played 4 games. I won 2 and I lost 2. I lost 2 to staffers, basically. I lost 2 to staff members who were there. Now, a lot of the staff members turn up to these things without letting you know that they're staff members. They will come in their own clothes. And generally, they'll have a really good time. But I did notice that one lad called Peter, and that is his real name as well. So, but I did ask him before I did this video whether I could mention him, and he said yeah. So hello, Peter. So he was playing a Necron army. Now, Necrons at this stage of 8th edition were, well, this is 7th at the time, were not very good. They were okay, but they weren't very good at all. And he was playing, I think it was someone doing 2 Skyhammer detachments, or 1 Skyhammer detachment, or something like that. Anyway, he was a portly gentleman, neckbeardy type, And I'm standing there, and I've got my beer, and I brought my beer in from Bugman's, and I'm standing there with a few of the other staffers, just chilling out and talking. And I'm looking over at Peter, and I can see him. He's red in the face, and he's looking at the table. Now, this isn't like Peter. Like, Peter's a very chill dude, and he will normally just try and get on with things as best as he can when he's in a game or whatever he's doing. And the guy opposite him is gesticulating, just wildly gesticulating. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? So I walk over. Like, hey man, what's going on? And without fail, the guy turns around to me. This is the guy who's playing, and says he's cheating. And I said, what do you mean he's cheating? He said well, he's getting rerolls where he shouldn't get rerolls. And at this moment in time, I look over to Peter, who is pointing out where he gets his rerolls in the codex. And this guy doesn't want to see it. And I read the codex, and Peter explains what's going on, and I can see this guy getting more and more flustered behind me, and like, Jesus Christ! And I'm reading the rules, and Peter's right; he should be getting the rerolls in this instance. And I just looked at this guy and just said, "Look, it's here in the thing. It says in the rule book, it says in the codex. This is what he does. He gets rerolls." Anyway. This guy storms out, right, and leaves his models on the table. Now, I don't know whether you know anything about tournament etiquette, but in terms of time, the game needs to be done by a certain time period, you know, and we had an idiot of an organizer who was a very much of a stickler for rules and fairness, quote unquote, and letting people come back and finish their games. And so for half an hour, we went to see this guy and try and find him, and in the end, the adjudicator ruled it a draw. Now, Peter was, and I shit you not, about 20 minutes away from tabling this guy, like literally. And it was a draw, and then this guy comes back in, smug as you like, and continues the tournament, and he ends up finishing 4th. From that draw, he wins 3 and draws 1. And he comes in 4th, and Peter's like 17th. I'm like down like 21st out of like 100 or something. And it just put a sour note on a lot of tournament experiences for me, because then after that, especially in 7th, that's when I started the tournament. The tournament scene was in 7th. My second tournament, I had a really good time, a fantastic time, and it was in the Midlands. And I went to this tournament, and a few guys from YouTube were there, and it was really cool. I went and I won 3 and I lost 1 this time around, playing as Grey Knights. But I came up against a demon player. Now I don't know whether any of you guys have ever had somebody who's playing an army that your army naturally doesn't like in the lore get very salty with you. I'm saying, like, you know, Space Marines against Chaos. You know, one of you gets extremely salty because you shouldn't be losing against the others because it's humiliating, you know, because, you know, your arch enemy's beating you, sort of thing. Sort of like a football team losing their local derby, you know? Their local derby match, like Everton and Liverpool, or Manchester United, Manchester City, sort of thing. Anyway, I was playing this guy, I call him Jeff, and Jeff has an army of demons, and I have an army of Grey Knights. The rest you can probably figure out for yourself. You know, he takes an absolute pounding, and I'm making jokes at my own expense, essentially. You know, I'm genuinely making jokes at my own expense because I want this guy to feel okay, because he's getting a dicking here. He's getting an absolute pounding, and I'm making jokes about how, like, you know, my you know, Grey Knights are not, you know, I think I Perils killed one of my Dread Knights. So I made a big song and dance about how he does it. Like, you know, he just Peril kills himself, like sucks himself into the warp. And I even said, like, it would be really funny if the baby carrier was still standing there and only the guy's been sucked into the warp. You know, that'd be really funny. And anyway, Jeff leans over the table, right, and says, if you're not going to take this fucking seriously, then maybe we shouldn't just play. You should just stop playing. You know, if you're not going to take it fucking seriously. And I just went, okay. I as much as I like to think that I do really well with confrontation, because I've been through shit before. Like, I've run bars, I've been in more than a few fights. I've got one knuckle on my right hand swollen permanently, and will never go down. You know, so I've been in a few scraps in my time. But when people do this sort of stuff to me, I just don't know what to say, because I'm sort of trying to compute whether they're being serious or not. And he was being serious. He's being very, very serious, and I understood why he was a bit pissed off, because he was getting tanked. But after this, it sort of spoilt it for me. So I duly won the game, and I went to shake his hand, and he packed up his models and walked away. And that to me is like a big no-no. You know, you shake the opponent's hand whether or not it's gone well or gone badly. You know, he was very fine with shaking hands with me before the game had kicked off, but obviously later on he didn't. Moving on to my next was when I went to a tournament with my manager, and this time I played. I came third in this one, which was like the highest I've ever placed, and so I won 4 games and then lost a tiebreaker. So I lost a tiebreaker, which is like a 500-point scaled down game. I got annihilated, and that meant I was third. And then the other 2 played an actual game where they went and you know, I can't remember who won. Anyway, I came third out of about 30 people, which I was really, really happy with. Anyway, my manager came about 8th, 9th, but he won 2 games, and one of them was against a young lad who was coming down with his first Salamanders army. He had a really nice Salamanders army, and his Haystack model was amazing and was painted by his dad. Right, so his dad had painted this model. He was going to come pick him up later, and this kid's around 12, 13, and his models looked like they were painted by someone who was like 15, 16, right? Not bad at all. His salamanders were nice and nicely done, but Haystack was a level above. I'm talking like his dad must have been nearly pro painter level. It was really, really, really good. Anyway, I'm playing on the table next to this game that's going on, and I hear my manager saying, he's beating this kid quite handily. Anyway, he says, the kid says, "Oh, your model's really nicely painted," because my manager was playing Space Wolves, and I'll be honest with you, my manager's models were not well painted at all. But that's just me, one color and then another color isn't a paint job for me. But that's, again, if that's what you do with your models, completely fine, and if you're proud of those, all power to you. I'm not going to judge you unless you judge other people, essentially. People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, sort of thing. Anyway, my manager says to this kid, "Oh, thank you, yeah. Which one of these did you paint? Right? Which ones of those did you paint?" And he knew, looking at these models, that he obviously hasn't painted Haystack. And the kid says, "Oh, I painted all these, and my dad painted this." And he goes, "Yeah, I can tell." That's what my manager says. He goes, "Yeah, I can tell." Like in a really arrogant, sweaty way, And I just stood on the table next to him playing my game, and I just shook my head. And I looked up to my opponent, and my opponent was just shaking his head like, "Dude," because the kid looked like he wanted to just start, not crying, but he went red in the face, and you could really tell he wasn't enjoying the game anymore, and he wasn't trying to do things that he should have been doing. He just didn't want to. He was just very much in his shell, and he was beaten. And he went and took his models and he put them away, and he went and sat on the side of the room and just waited for his dad to come pick him up. And I've never felt for someone that much before. Like, I just was like, that's not on. And I can't speak to him, he's my boss. You know what I mean? Like, I really wanted to fucking have it out with him, but what am I going to do? Get sacked for it? So I just walked over to this kid and with my opponent too, who I still speak to. I think he's a member of the channel. And I said, "Look, well played there, man. I could see that your models are really nicely painted. Can I see them?" And he said, "Yeah." So he got out Haystack, and they said, "No. I know that one. That's fine. But what about the others? I like troops. I don't really like characters." That's a lie. I love characters. But I said, I like troops. I want to see how you paint Space Marines. So he showed me Space Marines, and I picked out some stuff. I was like, wow, like the base is really, really cool, and I really like the way that you've done the snow. He obviously got it from Duncan on the Duncan Roads when he was doing a Games Workshop painting, where he did a snow base, because I do those snow bases as well now these days. And I was like, this is brilliant. Did you do this yourself and things like that? And he was like, yeah, I did all that. And so, he got a bit of a pat on the back, and his dad came and got him, and he was fine. He got a certificate, because everybody under 16 got a certificate, so he got a certificate, and he was happy with that. And off he went. And it just made me realise how certain people in the hobby are just not built to be in the hobby. And they are the flies in the ointment. They are the people who spoil the broth. They are the people who bring our hobby down for others. And it shouldn't be that way. It just shouldn't be that way. One last thing I wanted to say about tournaments. There was one I did in university, which was hilarious. So the one I did in university. Alright, so I'm playing Grey Knights in a tournament that is a very small scale tournament. So I think it's like you're allowed three units, and I think it was 3 units, but and only 2 of them can be vehicles, whatever, And it was a certain amount of points, and it was explicitly said in rules, please don't bring anything too overpowered. It's only a small tournament. So I brought a single Dread Knight. I brought a unit of 3 paladins and a unit of 10 interceptors, right? So we just bog standard, and they were led by one of the paladins who was like he was like an ancient, whatever he was, or a librarian or something. Anyway, I played Necrons, had a really good time. I played Orcs, had a really good time, won those two. And then I played Eldar, had a really good time and won that one too. And I came up against a guy who was running Sisters. I used the word running, I shouldn't use that word. He was using Sisters of Battle. And he used 2 Exorcists. And the Exorcists back then, they got 2d6 strength 8 and AP 1 shots. And back then, the lower your AP, the better. Because it cancelled out all. So basically, he cancelled all saves, essentially. So he just blasted everybody off the table. They couldn't get anywhere near him. And of course, the final battle of this day was like me on this big, large table against him. I'm like, okay, so I'm not getting anywhere near this guy. He's going to blast me off the table. And that's duly what happened. But the smarminess of the win really just stuck in my craw. I just thought, And like afterwards, like he was making comments about, oh yeah, things that I could have done better, as in me. And I was like, excuse me, yeah, do you know what you could have done better? Given anybody playing against you a chance today, that's what you could have done better. That I literally got into it with him because I was just like, I'm not having this. Like, I'm not like doing that to me is one thing, and I shook his hand after the game and walked off. Like, that's fine. I lost and whatever. But then to like after the tournament, like start giving me pointers in front of people, I was like, whoa, let's back up a bit. Like, what you did not take skill, and here is why. And I just told him, and he didn't take that very well. And it's the only time I've ever like lost it like that with somebody at a tournament. I was just like, no, because I'd seen him. His battles all day had lasted. Every battle lasted about 45 minutes. His battles lasted about 10, and the other player just packed up their stuff and went to play with someone else. It's just not fun. And I was like, look, you can bring whatever list you want, but technically you've taken advantage of the rules to bring something that's broken, considering what we were told in the remit to bring. You technically haven't broken any rules, which makes it even worse. It means you've gone out of your way to slip yourself into the, to really min-max it to the point where nobody has a chance against you. This was supposed to be a friendly tournament. And I'd really hate it when people don't get the memo. And they just, winning at all costs is all that matters to them, Anyway, those were 4 stories. One of them was not in my time at Games Workshop, but the other 3 were. Do you have any horror stories when you working when you work in Games Workshop, or when you were you were in the hobby, or you're still in the hobby? Do you have any games that have stood out to you as like a bad one? I had one game when I was at Games Workshop. This poor guy, and he was a really lovely guy. He was playing Dark Eldar, and we had this really cool game after I finished work, and I think it was a draw in the end. Yeah, I technically tabled him, but we called it a draw. And I left at the store that night and walked home, and I couldn't help feeling like, looking at this guy, like he just seemed very sad. He was having fun, but he just seemed very sad. Like there's something behind the eyes, sort of a thing, I didn't want to end this on a downer, but he ended up committing suicide a couple of weeks later. And I've never had anything affect me like that before. I was just like, I was shocked. I was flabbergasted. Because I'd seen him again in Tesco. Or Sainsbury's, sorry. In the place where I lived. And he seemed completely fine. But he said to me, hey, do you want to buy a Land Raider? I'm trying to raise funds. And I was like, not really, dude. But, I'll ask around in the store. And I did. And no one did. So he may have been having money troubles or something. I don't know. But that poor guy, and so that was another time where a game really brought home just how many broken people that need caring for we have in our hobby. And so that's what I would ask you to walk away with today is, the next time you play somebody that you don't know, or even if somebody that you do know, make sure they have a good time. Make sure that they are with you and telling the story that you're trying to put on the tabletop. And make sure that, hey, win, lose or draw, you both have a fantastic game, and a game that you can go and talk about and laugh about later on. That's all I've got for tonight. I'm gonna go and get in a shower and then go and chill out, watch a movie, and go to bed. Another week, another day, another dollar. Have a great weekend, guys.